Hello, my friends in Momentum Land, and welcome to Momentum Boost. I'm your host, Adrienne Gold Davis, and I'm so happy you're joining us today. So, if you're new here, just take some time to explore the layout. And if you want to ask our guest a question, you just click that question mark in the lower left hand side of the chat box. But just remember that all the questions that you put in there, they're not anonymous. Everyone can see them. So, if you wanted a bit of privacy, just remember, go ahead and click the hand icon instead. Okay? So, in this episode, we're going to travel back in time to the biblical wonderland, and we're going to unearth some of its most prized treasures. We are so fortunate to have Ze'ev Orenstein as our guide today. We're just thrilled to have him. He's the Director of International Affairs for the City of David Foundation, and he works hand in hand with government officials, with faith leaders, with NGOs, and with members of the media in order to strengthen awareness and support of this famed historical destination. Please join me in welcoming Ze'ev.
Thanks for having me. So when we think of Jerusalem, there is perhaps in the last 2,000 years of Jewish history that there is no idea, no word that is more powerful than that of Jerusalem. That whether it's at our Passover Seder at the culmination when we sing the words next year in Jerusalem, or whether it is at a wedding, at our moment of greatest joy, when underneath the chuppah or the wedding canopy, where we break the glass as we remember that there is no joy that is complete as long as Jerusalem is not fully rebuilt. Or 3 times a day when we pray, whether it is turning our hearts and our bodies to Jerusalem to say that that is where we are directing our thoughts, our prayers, our yearnings and dreams. In so many other ways also, Jerusalem is at the center of Jewish life. And yet, believe it or not, for so much of the last 2,000 years, when we collectively closed our eyes and imagined the Jerusalem of the Bible, the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, the Jerusalem of King David and King Solomon, we were all imagining it in the wrong place. Now, here's a hint. It's not inside the walls of the old city. It would only be in the year 1867 when we would finally rediscover the original location of the Jerusalem of the Bible. Where is the city of David? Until 150 years ago, had someone asked that question, the universal answer would have been the old city of Jerusalem. Until the year 1867, when Queen Victoria of England wants to discover the treasures of the Bible, such as the Ark of the Covenant, she sends a man by the name of Captain Charles Warren here to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem, to find those treasures. Now, Charles Warren makes a number of discoveries in this area, and he comes up with a theory that the original biblical city of Jerusalem, the city of King David, King Solomon, King Hezekiah, the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah, is not located inside the walls of the old city, but is located right here where I'm standing in the city of David. And over the next 150 years of archaeological discoveries at this site, Charles Warren will be proven to be correct. King David writes in the book of Psalms, some 3,000 years ago in Psalm 125, Jerusalem is surrounded by mountains, like God surrounds his people forever. Now, why does King David use that description of Jerusalem? Well, if he would have looked out his window to the north some 3,000 years ago, he sees the biblical Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount, the site that the Bible recounts the binding of Isaac, the place where the 2 temples would have stood. You have to the east the Mount of Olives. To the south, you have the ridge of Armon HaNetziv. You have to the west Mount Zion. Jerusalem is surrounded by mountains. When you're in the place where the Bible happened, the words of the Bible come to life. There is no place that has more significance to the Jewish people than Jerusalem, and there is no figure that is more closely associated with Jerusalem than that of King David himself. And yet King David never walked through the Jewish quarter of the old city, and he never placed a note between the stones of the western wall. For King David, Jerusalem was the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, located just outside the walls of the old city. And yet, until relatively recently, there was no proof outside of the Bible for the existence of King David. That's right. The person who was mentioned in the Bible more than anyone else, even more than Moses, there was no proof that he ever existed until the year 1993, when that would change. I'm standing here in the city of David, the place where 3,000 years ago, King David conquers this city and makes it the capital of his kingdom. And yet, until nearly 4 decades ago, there was a group of scholars who argued that King David never existed, that there was no proof outside of the Bible confirming his existence. Until the year 1993, when an excavation in Israel's north, in a place called Tel Dan, a large stone inscription is uncovered, dating some 150 years after the rule of King David. And this inscription is attributed to a man named King Hazael of Aram. And this King Hazael is himself mentioned in the Bible, in the second book of Kings. And he was in a good mood. Why? Because the inscription tells us that he had just won a decisive military victory. Over who? Over a king from the house of David. And if there's a house of David, that means that there was a King David. Today, consensus among archaeologists and scholars is that there was, in fact, a historic King David. Now, the Bible tells us that King David ruled from Jerusalem. And where was Jerusalem during the time of David? After 150 years of archaeological excavation, the answer is clear. Right here where I'm standing in the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began. Because when you're in the place where the Bible happened, the words of the Bible come to life. There's an ancient Jewish teaching which says God has many messengers. The truth of those words was perhaps never more apparent than a cold winter day in Jerusalem in the year 2004, when in the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, there was a sewage pipe, and that sewage pipe explodes. And now there's a big mess which has to be dealt with. And that busted sewage pipe would end up leading to not one, but to 2 of the most significant archaeological discoveries ever made in Jerusalem, ones that will literally bring the words of the Bible to life. Right now, we're going to learn a bit about the first one. 2004, at the southern end of the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, a sewage pipe explodes. The municipality sends in construction workers to repair the sewage pipe. But the city of David is not just another part of Jerusalem. And here, when a sewage pipe bursts, you don't only send in construction crews, you also have to send in archaeologists. And they begin to hear from the bulldozers and dump trucks scraping and scratching. It doesn't sound right. They clear everyone out. And it turns out that in repairing the sewage pipe, the construction crews had inadvertently uncovered a series of ancient stone steps dating back thousands of years. And they realized they had discovered the steps leading down to the pool of Siloam, the Shiloach pool. Now, what was the pool of Siloam? To answer that question, we have to go back some 2,700 years to the time of the biblical King Hezekiah, direct descendant of King David. Now, at that time, the armies of King Sennacherib of Assyria are marching on Jerusalem. Hezekiah understands there's going to be war, and he begins making his preparations, and one of the main things he does is to divert the waters of the Gihon Spring, the life source of Jerusalem during the times of the Bible, to flow entirely within the walls of the city of David. The Bible mentions that it was Hezekiah who builds the pool of Siloam. Where I'm standing right now in the pool of Siloam dates back some 2,000 years to the end of the Second Temple period. However, archaeologists believe that the original pool of Siloam, dating back to the time of Hezekiah, is located directly beneath my feet. The pool of Siloam has significance not just for protecting the water of Jerusalem, but also for another reason. The Bible tells us that there were 3 times during the year, Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, when all of Israel would have to go on pilgrimage up to the temple. Now, before you can do that, one must purify themselves. The pool of Siloam was a giant ritual bath, or mikvah, to allow the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of pilgrims going up to the temple to first purify themselves before beginning their ascent up to the temple from here at the pool of Siloam. When you're in the place where the Bible happened, the words of the Bible come to life. The historian Josephus, 2,000 years ago, wrote about, on the pilgrimage festivals, on Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, how there were nearly 3 million Jews who would go on pilgrimage up to the Holy Temple, to the Beit HaMikdash, which stood on the Temple Mount, the biblical Mount Moriah. And the archaeologists said if we now know where the Shiloach pool is, the pool of Siloam, where those millions of Jews would go to purify themselves before going up to the temple, the Holy Temple, and we knew where the Holy Temple stood on the Temple Mount, the archaeologists wondered, how did all those millions of Jews get from the pool of Siloam, the Shiloach pool, all the way up to the Beit HaMikdash? So they widened the excavation, and they found something incredible that is going, once it is completed, the excavation, to change Jerusalem forever. They uncovered what I like to call the biblical superhighway. And this biblical superhighway is being literally excavated as we speak. And in a moment, we are going to take a behind-the-scenes look at one of the most significant active archaeological excavations going on literally anywhere in the world. And this excavation, when completed, is going to change the way how all of us relate to Jerusalem forever. Let's take a look at this now, and God willing, in a few years' time, I look forward to being able to share this with you in person. I'm standing now on the pilgrimage road. This is the road that my ancestors and yours 2,000 years ago would have walked on when they ascended from the Pool of Siloam, where we just came from, purifying themselves before beginning the half-mile journey up to the temple on the Temple Mount, the biblical Mount Moriah. Not a road near here, not stones that look like these, but this road and these actual stones. This is the pilgrimage road, the biblical superhighway. Now, what archaeologists are doing is excavating a north-south connection from the Pool of Siloam going up towards the Temple Mount, the Western Wall, the southern steps. God willing, when that excavation is completed in the next few years, they will then do an east-west expansion of the pilgrimage road. As archaeologists excavate the length of the pilgrimage road, they discover homes and shops lining the ancient road. Imagine thousands of years ago, someone on their way up to the temple needs to purchase something for a temple offering. Perhaps they need to get a hat or a bottle of water. They would have stopped at one of these shops along the road, made their purchase, and continued either down to the pool behind me or up towards the temple. This was the beating heart of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Now, in ancient times, this road would have been under the sky, outdoors. Today, we are 60 feet beneath the surface. The modern neighborhood of the city of David is 60 feet above my head right now, with the cars and buses and homes and shops, and 60 feet below is the pilgrimage road. One of the challenges when you come to Jerusalem, when you come to the city of David, is how do you preserve the modern city while uncovering the ancient? And that's what we're doing in this excavation here. All these arches are supporting the modern, allowing us to uncover an archaeological treasure that has significance to billions of people around the world. Now, in the Bible, some of the most famous chapters in the book of Psalms are known as the Songs of Ascent. Traditionally, those chapters are understood to be a description of the spiritual experience going to Jerusalem, going up to the temple atop the Temple Mount, to the holiest place in the world. However, perhaps there is also a more literal, physical description of those same words, those songs of ascent. Now, we are literally walking up along the pilgrimage road, along that half-mile journey from the Pool of Siloam to the temple on the Temple Mount. As one is going up to the temple, that is the time when they were saying those chapters of the Psalms, those songs of ascent. Those songs of ascent are the actual physical description of the pilgrimage experience going up to the temple thousands of years ago. Because when you're in the place where the Bible happened, the words of the Bible come to life. Just a few days ago, we began the Hebrew month of Elul, the month of preparation as we prepare to enter into the Jewish New Year with all the festivals that go along with it. Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the festival of Sukkot. Now, thousands of years ago, when the Holy Temple, the Beit HaMikdash, was standing in Jerusalem, Jerusalem would have been at its fullest with millions and millions of people gathering in Jerusalem from all over the region. Now, today, sadly, we don't have the temple anymore, and there is no Beit HaMikdash on the Temple Mount. And yet we still have the ability, if not to make a physical pilgrimage, to make a spiritual pilgrimage. And that is the story behind the next discovery that I want to share with you. A discovery that really has a deep place of significance to me on a personal level. And it's one that when I think about it, it reminds me, not just on a personal level, but also on the collective level of the Jewish people, that the future is not set because of the past, that no matter what may have happened to us in the past, we still can write a different future for our story. No matter where we might be today, tomorrow can be better. And as we are in the month of Elul, during this month of introspection and preparation for the new year, it's a message that I think is all the more relevant right now. And so let's take a look at this very, very significant discovery. I'm standing next to one of my most favorite archaeological discoveries in all of Jerusalem. While not directly connected to the Bible, this discovery tells an important part of Jerusalem's ancient history. In the year 70, the Romans destroy the Second Temple, which stood atop the Temple Mount, the biblical Mount Moriah. And in destroying the temple, the 10th Roman Legion cast off the stones all the way down to where I'm standing here along the pilgrimage road. One of those stones was this ancient capstone, the southwestern capstone of the Temple Mount, bearing an ancient inscription more than 2,000 years old in Hebrew. The inscription says, "To the trumpeter's house." Now, what does that mean? Both the historian Josephus and the Talmud recount that in ancient times, there was a custom that before the Sabbath, a priest or Levite standing atop the Temple Mount would blow a trumpet or a shofar, telling the shopkeepers that the Sabbath is approaching, it's time to close up, make your last-minute purchases, go home, and accept the Sabbath. Today, in Israel, we have the same custom commemorating that ancient tradition. Just a few years ago, I brought my oldest daughter, Hodaya, to this stone. And I asked her if she could read the inscription. And she said, "Of course, Abba, Dad, it says Lebeit Hatkiyah, to the trumpeter's house." Now, I was obviously very proud. Thank God my daughter could read. But I thought to myself, there was something even more significant. How many peoples, how many nations can go back more than 2,000 years and read the writing of their ancestors, speak the same language as their ancestors, worship the same God as their ancestors, have the same customs, traditions, and festivals as their ancestors did 2,000 years ago? The reason why the Jewish people are here in Jerusalem is because this is where we've been for thousands of years, going all the way back to the time of the Bible. There's one final discovery that I want to share with you today, and one that I think is particularly relevant for this time of year. It's a tale of two coins. One coin marking destruction, another one celebrating rebirth. The first coin, going back 2,000 years, comes from one of the darkest, saddest times in all of Jewish history. And the second coin, separated by some 2,000 years, marks one of the brightest points in our shared history and in the history of Jerusalem. And again, it comes back to the same idea as was expressed in the last video, one that is in this time of year, no matter what the past was, we can still write a different future. That no matter what happened yesterday, today can be better. And no matter what happened today, tomorrow is still waiting to be written. It's up to us to decide what that story is going to be. That is the story of the Jewish people. That is the story of Jerusalem. There is perhaps no people in the world more so than the Jewish people, no city more so in the world than Jerusalem, that over a course of thousands of years has seen more than its fair share of ups and downs, of struggles, of tragedy, of destruction, but also of rebirth, of renewal, and of redemption. And that is what the message of this last discovery is that I want to share with you today. Now, in the year 70, the Romans would destroy Jerusalem. They would destroy the temple atop the Temple Mount. And they were so proud of their victory over Jerusalem that in the year 71, they minted a series of coins. And on one side of the coin, you had the Roman Emperor Vespasian. On the other side of the coin, you had a Roman legionnaire towering above a Jewish woman on her knees who was crying. And on the coin, it said, Judea Capta. Judea had been captured or defeated. The name of the country at that time was Judea. Its capital was Jerusalem. Jews are called Jews because we come from Judea. Yehudim come from Yehudah. This was the most widely minted victory coin ever minted by the Romans, as if to say their victory over Judea and Jerusalem meant more to them than all their other victories. If one's been to Rome, not far from the Colosseum, you can see the Arch of Titus. Now this arch was built in honor of Titus, who would later become emperor of Rome. But before he becomes emperor of Rome, he's the commander of the 10th Roman Legion, which destroys Jerusalem. On the arch, you could see the temple treasures, like the menorah, being led out of Jerusalem and into Rome. Again, you could see how proud the Romans were over their victory of Jerusalem and the Jewish people. And yet, during the period leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem, from 66 to 70, there was a period known as the Great Revolt, the Great Jewish Revolt for freedom against the Roman occupation. And each year of the revolt, the Jewish people would mint small bronze coins, similar to the one I have over here. And on these coins, in ancient Hebrew writing, it had the words Lecherut Zion, for the freedom of Zion. Zion being another name for Jerusalem. Now this coin dates back to the year 67. Now many similar coins just like this one have been found along the length of the road during the excavation. And scholars have long wondered, why were the Jews minting these coins? Because they must have known at that time that the Romans would eventually destroy Jerusalem. And if they really thought they had a chance to fight and defeat the Romans, why waste the metal on a worthless currency? Why not use it to make weapons, to make swords, to make arrowheads and spears? So I want to share with you an answer that I heard to this question. And that answer is that the Jews of Jerusalem understood that at that time, yes, Jerusalem was likely going to fall, but they believed that one day in the future, their descendants would return and find these coins and know what their ancestors lived and died for a free Jerusalem. Now, they probably thought it would take a few decades, maybe a century. They couldn't imagine it would be nearly 2,000 years before their descendants returned as sovereign to Jerusalem. But here we are in Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish state of Israel. And today there is a free Jerusalem, which is why in 1958, when Israel mints its first national medallion, they mint something that is seemingly very strange at first, because if you look closely, what they minted here was the Roman victory coin. Now, why would they do that with the Roman legionnaire towering above the Jewish woman? It says Judea Copta on it. It doesn't make sense until when you turn it over, you can now see the Roman legionnaire is gone. The Jewish woman is no longer on her knees crying, but standing tall, proudly holding a newborn child in her arms. Beside her is a man working the land, making the desert bloom. And on the coin it says, Israel Liberata. Israel has been liberated. Where is the great Roman Empire today? Gone. But the Jewish people and Jerusalem are still here, open to people of all faiths and backgrounds. And God willing, in the coming years, we will be able to open up this whole area from the Pool of Siloam, excavate the full length of the pilgrimage road, come out by the western wall, the southern steps, the footsteps of the Temple Mount, where people will literally be able to walk in the footsteps of their ancestors, in the footsteps of the Bible, showing that our shared connection to Jerusalem, the biblical heritage of Jerusalem going back thousands of years, is not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact. There's so much more of our heritage that's been uncovered in the city of David, the place where Jerusalem began, and there's even more that's waiting to still be uncovered. And so I invite all of you, God willing, once Corona is behind us, that hopefully next year in Jerusalem, we'll be able to come to the city of David and literally walk in the footsteps of your heritage, to walk in the footsteps of the Bible and to see the words of the Bible come to life. And in the meantime, while we are not yet able to come back to Jerusalem, you can follow the latest discoveries here with Momentum and also on the City of David's various social media channels. And I will end off by saying that stay tuned, because next week there is going to be a very significant announcement of an archaeological discovery that you will be able to literally open the Bible and see what was discovered and see that they match. The two go together, showing that our connection to Jerusalem is not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact. And on that note, I'm happy to turn things back over to Adrian for some Q&A.
Ze'ev, I found that so thrilling. I can't explain it. It was very emotional for me, as I imagine it is for people who come and do that tour. But I had a personal question here. So this road of ascent that they did, let's just imagine they're doing it in Elul on the way, this month that we're in right now, on the way to Jerusalem. What do you think people are thinking as they make that ascent, that pilgrimage? I never really understood what that pilgrimage represented. So just, can you help me understand what might have been their mindset?
Well, for many people, it could have been one of their first times visiting Jerusalem. I mean, today, if we want to go to Jerusalem, Corona aside, we get on a plane and then we stay at the King David Hotel or the David Citadel or wherever else, and we go to the Western Wall or the City of David, and it's pretty easy. But in ancient times, if you weren't living in the immediate environment of Jerusalem, it wasn't so simple to go there. And so for you to make it to Jerusalem, it could have been one of the highlights of your year. And if you were going with your family to share Jerusalem with them for the first time, for many of us who have been to Jerusalem, it's easy to take it for granted that we could just go when we want. And perhaps this time of year with Corona, it's maybe helping us to appreciate that it's not always so simple to go to Jerusalem. And when we can go to Jerusalem, that's a giant blessing and something to be appreciative for, because for so much of the last 2,000 years, most of our ancestors did not have the ability to travel to Jerusalem. And so whether it was thousands of years ago or even today, that journey, that was a special one. And I think for many of us, once we're able to make that journey again, I think we're going to appreciate, how special it was thousands of years ago on that pilgrimage journey, because in a certain sense, we're all looking forward to that pilgrimage journey ourselves once Corona is behind us.
Oh, you're so right. And you know what? We can reenact it in this month on a kind of metaphysical level by taking a spiritual journey back to our true selves, which is what we're meant to be doing anyway. So there's so many questions. I'm gonna begin asking you as long as we have time. Well, someone asked, is the pilgrimage road the same as the tunnel that was uncovered that acted as a rain drainage tunnel that was also used as an escape route for the Jews at the time of the destruction of the temple?
So the tunnel that's being referred to in this question is actually the sewer beneath the pilgrimage road. There's an
Oh,
incredible story there of the last Jews of Jerusalem hiding in that tunnel. It's literally the moment of Tisha B'Av captured, but we'll have to save that for another momentum boost.
okay. Somebody else asked about the pilgrimage road. If it was a two-way, people going towards the pool, and then going to the temple, wouldn't there have been like a small wall or ridge, like the coming and the going? Was there anything like
So
that?
So the archaeologists right now are doing a north-south excavation along the eastern side of the pilgrimage road. What
Uh-huh.
we have discovered, what you saw in the video, the road itself is about 4 or 5 times wider than that. So we've yet to reach the middle of the pilgrimage road, but there almost certainly would have been some type of separation for matters of ritual purity, that those going down to the pool couldn't come into contact with those who had already purified and were on their way up to the holy temple. So I'm sure we'll find something like that, but we haven't found it yet, so stay tuned for a big announcement about that, hopefully in the years to come.
Oh, can't wait to hear. Okay, last question for you here. What is your favorite discovery that they found there? What really speaks to you?
Well, it's like asking what's your favorite child, and the correct answer usually is we're not supposed to have one. So I will
Uh-huh.
share one, since there was one video that highlighted my oldest daughter, Hodaya.
Uh-huh.
We found a seal going back 2,500 years in Jerusalem, and the name on the seal was Eliana, daughter of Gael. Now, what's special about that seal is it's one of 5 seals that goes back 2,500 years, end of First Temple Jerusalem, belonging to a woman. It was very rare back in the day for women to have their own seals. Now, while we don't know who this person, Eliana Bat Gael, was, we know she was someone important. Now, I have my second child. Her name is Eliana. And so I came home and I said to my Eliana, we found a seal with your name on it today. And not only do you share the name with this person, but you worship the same God, have the same customs, traditions, and festivals. And how many nations, how many peoples can go back 2,500 years and say that they have all those same things in common with their ancestors? So it's something that's really special that we're from Jerusalem, not because of the Holocaust or persecution. This is where we've been for thousands of years, and no one else really can say that in the world. It's very, very special.
You're right. You're right. I'm so grateful for everything that you've shared with us today. Truly, really and truly, Zev, I can't thank you enough. You shared your time and these incredible treasures from our past. It's just it's exuberating. It energizes me.